Welcome to my cozy little corner of the internet. Today I want to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of October. I read a total of 10 books and only one was physical, unfortunately. All the other ones were audio. I've said this before, but I work in a job where I can listen to audiobooks while I'm working, so the majority of what I end up reading is through audio. I'm trying to make a conscious effort to physically read more because there's so many benefits you can get from it and it's good for you. I don't always feel like I have the mental capacity to sit down and use my eyeballs to read, nor do I really sometimes feel like I have the time. So usually when I read a book physically, it takes me almost the whole month. With that being said, I do feel like 10 books in a month is a lot. And I'm kind of blessed that I'm able to literally read on the clock. I got 10 books. I'm gonna do them in order from when I read them, because that's just the order I have. I wanted to do best to worst, but it's just on my screen and it's easier. Oh, and then I don't own any of these books physically. I also kind of have made a conscious effort this year because I listen to so many audiobooks and read on my Kindle that I've kind of done this thing where I'll read books on audio or Kindle, and then after a while I have a list that I compile of all the books I want physical copies of, so I can be very, very harsh about what I want on my shelves. Right now I don't even have that much room to add to my shelves, so my list is getting kind of ridiculous. But once I get more shelves and I am able to buy more physically, I will have way more books than I have now. Let's start with the first book. So the first book's a romance, and it is People Watching by Hannah Boehm Young. This is about a girl who is the main caretaker of her mother who has Alzheimer's, and it's her and her dad that are taking care of her. And then the MMC is he comes back to help his brother open a local bar. It is a small town romance. And he comes back to help his brother open this bar. He has a lot of trauma coming back to his hometown, essentially. The store that the FMC's family owns is right next to the bar that the MMC's family is opening. I really liked this. As far as romances go, I used to be so into contemporary romances. That's all I read. But somewhere along the line, there was a switch and I don't really read them as much anymore, but I believe I was coming off of 2 Stephen King books, and so I wanted something that was a little light, and the cover of this book is so autumnal, but the book itself is not. But that, I don't know, I was hoping it would be, but I wasn't mad. I gave this book 5 stars. I think I was being a little generous with my 5 stars. I feel like more that I think about it is probably more a 4.5. But I've read one other book, I think it was Out on a Limb by Hannah Boehm Young, and she is so good at writing tropes that I feel like people don't like. I really want to read her other books so I can see if that's her specialty, because Out on a Limb was an unexpected pregnancy, which I hate that trope, but she did it so well. And then in this one, I don't really think this is a spoiler. I think it depends on what you consider a spoiler in your books. But in this book, the female is a virgin, and that's usually really kind of icky how it's handled, and I don't really care for that much. So it's got that trope, but she did it so well in this. I actually didn't mind it as much. I could have done without it, but she did really good with it. And yeah, I don't know, the romance was really cute, and I don't know why in my head, and the MMC's name is Milo, and maybe I'm just correlating names, but the way that he's described, I'm gonna show a picture over here of how I feel like he's described, but for some reason a grown-up version of Jess in my head from Gilmore Girls, covered in tattoos. I don't know why, but that's what I saw. So just morph these two together and yeah. And so I ate that up, I have to say. Their banter was really, really good in this. I don't know. I really liked this. And if you like contemporary romance and you haven't read anything by Hannah Boehm Young, I definitely think you should, because I actually genuinely enjoy her romance. And she writes her smut nice too, not icky or anything. Next book I read, obviously we're in October, so I was like, okay, I gotta get my spooky reads going or whatever, and I decided to listen to Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I've never read anything by Paul Tremblay, but I do know that his horror leans a little bit more on the like literary side. That's typically the type of horror that I kind of am drawn to. This was good. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think this is for everybody. I think that like the twist and what he decided, like the direction he decided to go with this type of story is not something that I feel like a lot of people would like, but I really had fun with it. It is basically about a character. He was involved in a horror movie, like the making of a horror movie, while they were like a little bit younger, and it never got finished. And flash forward, basically a lot of the footage and the script and stuff like that got leaked to the public, and it has created this like cult following behind this movie, which was called Horror Movie. It's basically following this guy, and he's the only one who's still alive, not through anything sinister, but they all just died from like random things. He's alive, and he played the killer. The studios have been trying to get this movie like on the ground for a very long time, and he basically has finally decided that he was going to okay it. And it's kind of like going back and forth between like the making of the movie and the like new making of the movie. This was really good. The horror in this is really good. It's pretty gory and a lot of body horror, which I thought I hated, but I didn't really mind. I'm starting to not mind body horror, which could be a bad thing, but I don't know. I thought the way this book ended was very left field in an interesting way. I don't know. I kind of ate this up too. Like, I had fun. And the way it's structured as well is super, super unique. It's like there's parts of the script of the actual horror movie, and the way that the audiobook does it does it as if she's like reading it. So it's got a whole nother voice actor as like the female character from the horror movie, and she's reading her parts. It's like the audiobook is like a whole production. It's really, really good. But the actual book I've seen, because I got it from the library to follow along, and it has like, it literally looks like a script and like newspapers, and like it's very multimedia, which I'm finding I really find interesting, especially in horror. But yeah, I liked it. I think the biggest turnoff for a lot of people will probably be he takes his time and really loves a good setup. And I haven't read anything else by him, but I have heard a lot of other people, his other books, he definitely does that. He's like slower, and he really focuses on the characters and what the characters got up here. So I think I can see a lot of people that just turning off a lot of people, but I think coming from like me, someone who I love a character-driven story and I love a slow story, it really worked for me. It wasn't like my favorite book in the world, but it did work for me. Okay, so next we have a classic. I finally read Frankenstein. I have had Frankenstein and Dracula on my like brain TBR a really long time, and I read Dracula last year, very much enjoyed it, and then this year I was like, okay, it is the year I'm gonna read Frankenstein, and it was good. I understand, you know, obviously why people like it. I'm not gonna describe Frankenstein. I think at this point it would just be beating a dead horse. Like we know what Frankenstein's about. I thought it was good. It was a very, very good gothic classic. I think, and if you're in the book community, you know this is a thing. If somehow you're not, then you probably won't, but it is not scary. But I don't think a lot of gothic books are scary. It's more like unease. and it's not scary. And I actually think that Frankenstein reads more like a literary fiction book. Like, I think that if this book came out during this time, it would be a literary horror. Like, I don't think it would be like horror. Yeah, I love how she wrote the creature, and also, like, first of all, it will make you hate Victor so much. Like, that man is so selfish for no reason. Creature, like, oh, the creature. I just, like, felt so bad for him the entire time. Like, he just wants to be loved. That's really all my thoughts on that. I gave it 5 stars because, let's be honest, it's an originator. It is, like, the vibes are elite. Like, I swear, I think the whole book it's raining. Like, the vibes are elite. So, loved Frankenstein. So glad I can finally say that I read Frankenstein. So yes. Next book I feel like was very left field, especially for October. So I read a lot of the Emily McIntyre, I do not remember what they're called. They're like dark romance fairy tale retelling books. The first one's called Hooked. I read a lot of those. Those are really fun, dark romance. I just love a fairy tale retelling, and like those are very much dark romance, kind of silly, kind of ridiculous, but I have so much fun with them. A new book come out recently. When I was looking at it, first off, the cover's gorgeous. First of all. Second, it is a like small town Romeo and Juliet retelling. And something super random about me is I love a Romeo and Juliet retelling. I fell in love with the play when I read it in school, and then I actually did theater, and I was in Romeo and Juliet for one of the random productions that I did. I think high school. But it was like at my city, like it was in my city. I just have like a fondness for Romeo and Juliet retellings that are like set in like a different setting, like not a traditional setting. And I like seeing what they do. Like, how do they bring Benvolio into it? How do they bring Mercutio into it? How do they bring the prince? And like, what is the families fighting over? And like, kind of like West Side Story, it being like a gang type story. Like, I don't know. I just find like that really, really fun. And so I read Burning Daylight, Emily McIntyre, and this is not autumnal in the least. It's not like spooky at all, but I don't know. And I don't know if coming off of horror movie and then Frankenstein, my brain was like, dark romance. I have no idea, but I wanted to read it and I listened to it. I tend to give a lot of like dark romances, like well-written good dark romances 3 stars. It's fun. There's really not much to it. I don't take it very seriously, but this was a really good Romeo and Juliet retelling. Like, I really enjoyed the choices she made of certain characters, and like she's really good at that. Like, she's really, really good at taking like fairy tale type stories and morphing them into like a modern day and doing fun things with different characters you're used to seeing. I don't know. I ate this up. I read it quickly. The audiobook's decent. 3 stars. Next, I actually have a DNF. I don't think it's the book's fault. So last month, September, I read Stalking Jack the Ripper, and that was good. It was good. I don't remember what I gave it, but I remember liking it, and I immediately went into the second one because I was physically reading it, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna keep my momentum going and go into the second one. And the second one is called Hunting Prince Dracula. I think I got to like the 50 or 60 mark, and I was just like, I think my brain was just like, I wanted something new. I think for me, going back to back with books doesn't really work for me. Every time I try to do it, I end up wanting to DNF the second one. Not very good at binging a series. I always have to read something in between or do something in between. But I also didn't want to forget about the series, which is something else that I tend to do. And so I just decided to go into the second one and just ended up kind of being bored. But I don't really necessarily feel like that's her fault. This one's set in like Romania, and it's a little bit more on like the colder side, but it's kind of like these killings look a lot like Dracula, and so someone's clearly recreating Dracula killings and like blood being sucked out their body. And so I thought that would be like a good October read, but my brain was just not into it. So I think I DNF'd it at like 50%. Maybe I'll go back to it like next year or something like that. But I really enjoyed the first one, and I liked the characters, but the second one just didn't capture me the way the first one did. The next book I read was Abaddon's Gate, third book in the Expanse series. And I can't really say too much about the plot of the third one, so I'll just explain what the first one's about, because it's one of those series. I think it's like a 9-book series, so like it's gonna start getting hard to like talk about them. It's a sci-fi series. It's like set in a distant future where we live amongst like Mars and the moon, and then there's people who live like on the belt who were like born in space and whatnot. There's a detective who is like trying to find a girl. There's a captain who owns like a ship, who later this like ship basically becomes this like ragtag group in space. And this detective and this captain kind of like come together, and it's kind of thrown amongst a very complicated political storyline that has a lot to do with like the expansion of space and the idea of like colonizing the solar system. It's the best way I can explain it. It's a little complicated. I love this series. I think I enjoyed the second book better than the third book, but I did really like this one. This book has a very interesting structure where like you pretty much know you're always gonna get Captain Holden's point of view. He's like a main point of view that you're gonna get in every single book, and then there's always like 1 or 2 point of views that have to do with the central plot of this specific book. I happen to like the POVs that we got in the second book. There was like a Martian character who I loved in the second book, and she's not around in the third book. I don't really know why. Nothing happened to her. I think they went their separate ways. I don't remember. These POVs were good. I think by the end of it and the direction that this book took in the plot, I ended up really liking. I just didn't really care too much about the POVs. I think as it went on, there was one particular POV. She was a preacher. I didn't care for her in the beginning. I ended up really loving her by the end. Didn't absolutely love the POVs, but I think by the end of it, I understood the direction that it was going. And I actually think that's just normal for the Expanse books. I think I tend to like read the beginning and I'm like, oh, okay. And then by the time I get to the end, I'm like, this is so cool. Ended up giving it 4.5. Yeah. Ended up giving it 4.5 stars because those POVs just weren't quite what I liked. But by the end of that series, by the end of that book, I was like, yes, that was good. The next book I actually read in a recent vlog, in the last vlog. I read Something Wicked This Way Comes, and this is by Ray Bradbury. This is a super typical October book. Like if you go on any Reddit, you look on Google, which book should I read in October? This book is gonna pop up. It is a creepy circus that comes to town. There's these like 2 best friends who like stumble upon this creepy circus in like a Midwestern town. And it's like dark and sinister, and it takes a dark and sinister turn. Like that's really it. It's this creepy circus that does some things to this town. I said this in my last video, but I liked it. I think Ray Bradbury knows how to write October. He knows how to write Halloween. He knows how to write creepy. He knows how to build tension. But that's really all I have to say. Like I didn't feel super connected to the characters. And I don't know if it's just because I read the audio or it's a little bit older. I don't really know. I thought it was very fun. The plot was very fun. I was just along for the ride. But it's not like it's my favorite book in the world. But I would say like anyone looking for an October book, it's gotta read Something Wicked This Way Comes. Book I'm gonna talk about is Child Thief. Child Thief is a Peter Pan retelling written by Brom. I first seen his artwork, I lost my mind. Like, it's so pretty. The way I imagine this book in my head, like the entire time, perfection. It is a dark horror Peter Pan retelling that is kind of more leaning towards like dark traditional fae. There are a lot of like monsters in this, and like green teeth is in this. So good. It is following Peter Pan and him growing up, and it's called Neverland, not Avalon. And it's Peter, and it's showing him growing up and how he ended up being how he is. And then simultaneously, you are also following Nick, who gets picked up from Peter. Basically, Peter goes out and finds kids who are trying to run away or like don't want to be in their environment anymore. Nick basically gets involved with some like stuff with some drug dealers, and he's like trying to like disappear. And Peter convinces him to come with him to Neverland. You realize that, I need to stop calling it that. Once you get to Avalon, you realize that it is actually dying, and there is also kind of like a war going on with these people that are causing Avalon to die. So you have that storyline while simultaneously talking about Peter and him growing up. Horror was good in this. This was like magical fantasy horror, kind of like the last one. Oh, so good. 10 out of 10, 5 stars. You don't have to do a lot of convincing when it comes to Peter Pan retellings. I love Peter Pan, and I also feel like he is peak when he is manipulative and likes to play games. Very selfish. Like, if you read the original, which I've listened to it a few times, you can realize like Peter is not that great of a person, and I just love when he's portrayed in this way. And I think adding the fae and adding the monsters and making Avalon how Avalon is, very like dark fairy tale-esque, I genuinely enjoyed this story. All right, so that's all the books I read in October. I read 10 books this month. Had some good books, didn't really have many, duds. For the most part, they were pretty good. I want to know what your favorite book you read in October is, and also I just looked back to these clips and the sun looks crazy, but I don't really feel like filming this, so sorry, it's kind of an eyesore. That is the 10 books I read in October. Don't forget to like and subscribe. New videos on Fridays, and yeah, thanks.